It was the 16th most covered story in the last 5 months. The most covered story was Iraq, second was the Pope, and it goes down from there.
What's your theory, Cynthia, as to why that is? I mean, do you buy into Steve Koz's theory that this is, it's just such a tacky subject that people don't want to touch it if they don't have to?
Well, you know, Ted, there's a certain yuck factor here. These are really difficult charges to hear about, things we don't want to be true. I also think there's an additional factor. I think in both the O.J. Simpson case and the Scott Peterson case, there was a certain wonderment. Could it be true? There was a mystery. Right or wrong, a majority of Americans seem to feel that Michael Jackson may well have committed these crimes. I mean, thanks to Maureen and others who have covered Michael Jackson for years and have reported on other allegations, I think a lot of people think that Michael Jackson may in fact be a pedophile, and the question is not as mysterious as it was in some of these other cases that we've followed.
Maureen, I must say I'm curious as to... Yeah, go ahead, Steve, if you wanted to jump in.
Well, I just think there's one other influence that's very different than the O.J. Simpson trial. There's been an explosion of media outlets. We have the internet explosion as well. So even though there isn't as much traditional coverage on the Jackson trial because of its subject matter, you still have major outlets across the planet where people can get information on this trial. Yeah, I agree with Cynthia totally. It doesn't have the cleanness and the weight of the O.J. Simpson case, but the public is still vastly aware of this.
So
remember, there's no...
Well, there's one thing that's very important, and that is there's no camera in the courtroom, as there was with O.J. So that's a huge difference.
Should there be either surprise or embarrassment over the fact that, you know, in one courtroom very nearby, there's a triple homicide case going on, receiving hardly any attention, and yet still, and particularly on cable television, which as Steve Koz points out, is this massive void that needs to be fed and filled every day. What do you think, Maureen? Should there be any sense of wonderment that we're not covering one and giving so much coverage to the other?
During the Scott Peterson trial, there was a man who was accused of murdering his pregnant wife right down the jail cell block from Scott Peterson, but he wasn't photogenic, he didn't have a lot of still pictures and video to show, they didn't look like the couple next door, so they didn't get any coverage either. I think television really gravitates towards people who are either good looking or who are celebrities, and Michael Jackson to me really represents the entire trajectory from fame to infamy, and I don't think in this country we make much of a distinction anymore between the two.
Can any one of you, and just start talking and the other two will stop, I hope, can any one of you explain why there is this international interest in, I understand Michael Jackson is an international star, but it almost seems as though there has been more attention overseas than there is here at home.
There has been a lot more attention, and most of the fans at the courthouse are basically from foreign countries. They outnumbered the Americans most days of the trial. And I think it's because there are very, very few people in the world today who are completely an international brand the way Michael Jackson is. Madonna, maybe Michael Jordan. There aren't too many anymore because of the proliferation of different media outlets. And these people consider him one of the biggest stars in the world. And they don't have the same feelings that we have. We're a 46-year-old man. It's hard to still stay a pop star after all that time.
It is hard to stay a pop star even without these kinds of charges leveled against you. Steve Koz, is Michael Jackson finished no matter which way this trial goes?
I think he's finished. I think there's two reasons for that. Number one, if he's found guilty of the charges, you have basically the hoax that's been perpetrated on the American public for the last 10 or 15 years is exposed, and the public may have forgiven him or sort of brushed aside the 1993 charges against him. They're not going to do it twice. And the second thing is that the people that buy music are generally 25 years or younger. They don't know Thriller. They connect Michael Jackson with molesting, and I think that's going to be an obstacle that he cannot overcome. It's just impossible. I just can't let you go without challenging you a little bit. What do you mean on the hoax that has been perpetrated? What's the hoax? Well, Michael Jackson, and you mentioned Madonna, or I think Maureen did, Michael Jackson took public perception of himself and marketed that through his machine to the point where he became the king of pop. He was viewed as perhaps eccentric, perhaps bizarre, but a man who loved children, loved animals, gave to charities, took sick children into his home, always helped the needy. That's the perception that he foisted on the American public. Now, if there's a dark secret underlying that, if there's a disconnect between his perception and the reality of Michael Jackson, and that disconnect is verified by a guilty verdict, the public will not forgive him.
Do you think, Cynthia, that the media has been largely aware of the hoax that Steve is referring to and simply either afraid to refer to it openly for fear of a libel suit, or just playing along with it because he's good copy?
I think essentially that's what this jury is called upon to decide, and what they're deliberating again starting tomorrow morning. After 4 months and 140 witnesses, they're going to decide whether or not Michael Jackson has been telling a lie, and we're going to have to await their verdict. It's worth noting, by the way, that if acquitted, he's been offered a gig in Las Vegas, Ted. So I don't know if his career is completely over. I mean, if convicted, he's going to go to prison for a very long time, anywhere up to 18 years. So his career is certainly over.
Actually, it wouldn't be the first time that someone whose career was over was offered a gig in Las Vegas, but go ahead, Steve.
The media was not complicit in this. The media was not complicit in this hoax at all. The media did make runs at Michael Jackson. The problem is that the subject matter does not sell. Money fuels the media. When you go out with a child abuse story or a child molestation story, it doesn't sell. So the media did try to present to the public the information it had. It didn't drive sales, and they backed away from it.
Maureen, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I've written about him 5 times now with this new article in Vanity Fair, and I have tried to show exactly what is the underlying reality. And I think that what I found so striking in 1993 was even the district attorney of Los Angeles really didn't want to put, quote, one child up against Michael Jackson. Everybody is afraid of his celebrity. And he's gotten preferential treatment and deferential treatment from the county agencies, etc., all the way down the line, because people are freaked by his celebrity.
Well, not so much.
His money.
Yes, I was going to say not so much celebrity, but money. But go ahead, Cynthia.
Well, I meant that's part of it, obviously. Yeah.
In this instance, Michael Jackson has been, at least until now, very able to defend himself. He has had the best that money could buy in terms of attorneys, and he has had all the money in the world to parole the perimeter. So I think that's a big part of it.
He also has employed a number of private investigators to intimidate witnesses. I mean, the father of the 1993 accuser was beaten up. His office was ransacked. Even today, reporters are followed around. I mean, there's a lot of dirty, sinister stuff going on underneath the surface. And in my article, I talk all about how he wanted to stop the trial and thinks it's a conspiracy to get his Sony music catalog.
Steve, go ahead. You'll get the last word because we're just about out of time.
Well, I think Michael embodies a celebrity with entitlement. There's been very, very little consequences to his actions up to this moment in time. If there are no consequences, it will just continue to allow him the entitlement that he feels he deserves.
Steve Kahn, Cynthia McFadden, and Maureen Orth, thank you all very much indeed. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
And there's even an escape room, so to speak?
Yeah, there's a special cedar closet in the bedroom closet. And if there's some security breach or something happens, there's a special code that they trigger, and they say, Michael, go to your room. And then 5 steel plates come down between the 2 closets, and he's locked in there until they come get him out.
And because this place is so secure from the get-go, this is clearly not security meant for to protect him from an intruder.
No, because he's got some like concrete beams every 17 feet all over the ground with electronic eyes. I mean, it's absolutely not. It's just the privacy. And also, when he travels around the world, he has this elaborate security set up for his suites and hotels where people who've traveled with him told me he often has little boys in the room with him.
There was talk that there were secret rooms inside Neverland Ranch, and then there was a lot of speculation, especially when the molestation charges came up, that those rooms were dubious in certain ways.
I think that's the media kind of twisting it.
I'll tell you what, the secret room out of Michael Jackson's in the bedroom used to be a fur vault for the woman who lived there before. He made a bedroom out of it, and each step going down, there was a little porcelain doll on each step.
Yeah.
What was Neverland like? I don't know, because I was never there. I don't know, because I was never there.
Also, coming up, we're going to have another exclusive in the case. We're going to talk about a boy, a little boy. He was the entertainer's guest, and he was a child. There had been a report that Jackson had gotten him drunk. Now he's speaking out exclusively to us. We're going to hear from him next. 12-year-old boy, back in 1988, spent 4 days with Michael Jackson. Now Richard Matsuura is coming forward to defend Jackson and publicly dispute an article in Vanity Fair which said that Jackson served the boy wine. NBC News' Mike Taibbi interviewed Matsuura from Japan and joins us now. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Actually, we spoke with him on Thursday night via a two-camera hookup. Richard Matsuura is 18 now, a college student, and he says he contacted NBC News to correct an erroneous published report, that report in Vanity Fair, about his experience with Michael Jackson in Tokyo 6 years ago.
I was taken to the hotel where my father and Michael had a meeting, and at that time, somebody escorted me to Michael's room, and we just introduced each other. I said I was Ricky Matsuura. He said he was Michael Jackson.
Ricky Matsuura told us from Tokyo he was the then 12-year-old boy who spent 4 days in the presence of the pop star in 1998. The boy described in a magazine article as having been supplied by one of Jackson's people with 3 soda cans filled with wine to the point where he became sick. His father, according to the article, was so furious he immediately ended talks with Jackson about a theme park venture. How much, if any of it, is true?
Absolutely zero. Besides the fact of Michael Jackson coming to Japan in '98 and actually giving a press conference about this theme park business, all the other allegations and statements made about his trip to Japan in '98 are completely false. Completely false.
Matsuura said his 4 days with Jackson were a memorable whirlwind that gave him a window into the mind of Michael Jackson. He says what he saw as a 12-year-old boy helped him understand what so many adults cannot.
When he says sharing a bed, everybody's out to make it like he's, going to sexually molest them. And that's absolutely not true. He never had the chance to joke around as a kid, play water gun fights and that kind of thing. It was all strictly business pressure on him as a child. And that's what he seeks in children, is that worryless childhood.
Matsuura says Jackson never said or did anything inappropriate over the 4 days he spent in his company. He says he did drink a champagne toast under his father's supervision and that he did later become sick. He's coming forward now on his own because he knows that at least one of the stories about Michael Jackson is untrue.
I was there, I know everything that happened.
Did anybody from Michael Jackson's camp, I'm talking about lawyers, public relations people, spokespeople, offer to pay you anything to come forward, or have they paid you anything to come forward?
I could open my bank account records for everybody. No money. No, not at all.
All right, I spoke earlier today with Maureen Orth, who's the author of that article in Vanity Fair and one of the recognized experts on the Jackson saga. Ms. Orth acknowledges that she was never able to actually speak with Richard Matsuura, but that she stands by her source for the story. And in fact, the magazine this afternoon, Dan, issued a statement saying that since hearing Richard Matsuura's account of what transpired in Japan in 1998, Vanity Fair has contacted its on-the-record source for the story, former Jackson Chief Financial Officer Myung-Ho Lee. And Lee says, I've read the Vanity Fair article, and I stand by everything I said in the article. Now, I should tell you, Dan, we also spoke with Ryusuke Matsuura, who's Ricky's father, and he stands by his son's version. So like so many other tales from the Jackson story, this is one where someone is clearly right and someone is clearly wrong.